Hi everybody, so I'm Jeremy Hunt and my normal job is the team manager for social workers in the Wirral, but today I'm going to talk about white privilege. The reason I'm doing this is because after, we heard before, after George Floyd and Black Lives Matter set up, I was thinking that my social work training about anti-racism wasn't up to date, and then when I spoke to students and social workers who'd got new training to being social workers, they all agreed that it's kind of not recent of understanding what's happened after George Floyd was murdered and Black Lives Matter. And that's why I went to Cheshire Merseyside Social Work Training Partnership for each one and tell one to look at white privilege. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. This is mainly for social workers who are white, or anybody, kind of look at this and see what you think about whether it's good or bad for talking to the other people in your teams and in your councils and your organisations. So what is white privilege? White privilege is a reward that white people receive in exchange for participating in our system in this country of white supremacy, whether or not it's voluntary or involuntary. And also it's the unearned advantages. So we've not earned these advantages that are granted. And we only have these because we are actually white, or we are able to pass as white. When you talk to other people, your colleagues, you might get people saying, oh, there are other people who haven't got privileges as well, such as white children in exams and things like that. But that's not what we're talking about today. It is our privilege, which we've not earned, and we are, whether we've got voluntary or involuntary in our white supremacy, and that is what is coming on today. So, challenge white privilege. Well, in order to dismantle white privilege, and we've spoken about dismantling today, so we must understand how much white privilege is a key aspect of our lives. So, how we benefit from our whiteness, and then also what it means for the people who do not receive that same benefit, and then how we can dismantle it. And obviously we can't dismantle what we can't see. And then of course we can't challenge what we don't understand. And this book, White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, all the way back in 1989 from Peggy McIntosh, gave examples of what are the white privileges. And these include that we can quite easily arrange to be in the company of our white race most of the time. When we're told, perhaps in schools or in programs and stuff, about our national heritage or our civilization, we are shown that it's our colour, of people of our colour, made what we've got now in terms of our history. We can go into a bookshop and we can easily find the writing of our race represented, or we can go into a supermarket and find the foods that fit in with our culture. We can easily go into a hairdresser's shop and find someone who can deal with my hair very easily. We don't have to educate our children to be aware of racism for their own protection. And then if the traffic police officer pulls me over, I can be sure that I haven't been singled out because of my race or colour. And then if my day is going badly, I don't need to ask about each negative episode or situation. Is it for racial overtones? So these are some of the things that are privileges, and these are about 7 or 8 of them, but Peggy McIntosh had about 50 examples. So I think now, Nicola, if we have people going into a room, they can see if they can understand any other privileges that they have for about 20 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. Mo, if you want to put the breakout rooms, if we come back at 25 past 2, and if we feed back. So we're wanting people to go into the rooms and actually identify any other white privilege privileges that they have. Is that correct, Jeremy?
It is indeed, yeah.
Thank you. That'll take a few seconds for you to go. Hello, everyone.
Oh.
You'll be pinged back into the new room, back into the main room.
Does anybody want to say anything that they spoke about? Any other examples of white privilege that they found or identified?
I think someone's just said, sorry, I forgot your name, was it Helen? Has just said that if your child's got a rash and you phone 111, they'll say, oh, Google it. So you look at it and you see that it's chicken pox, but it's on white skin. You never see an advertisement on Google, when you Google a skin condition, on black skin. And again, that's something that I wasn't aware of, that it's so blindly in my face. But until Helen brought it up, I wasn't even thought about it. Was it Helen who rose that?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think Felicity added towards the end of our conversation, because we talked about different factors, but Felicity, you were talking about just us as white people, being able to be ignorant to a lot of it, and I thought that is the privileges in itself, having the privilege to be ignorant and not thinking about it. And that's, I think for me, that's what the conversation is about, to try and awaken that ignorance and challenge it, and trying to be aware, because non-white people don't have the privilege of being ignorant to any of this, which we do.
Yeah, indeed, indeed.
We had a similar conversation in our group about how it's hard to know what that is, because you're just taking it for granted. So the thing, the kind of the walking down the road or sitting down somewhere and somebody moves away from you and you're wondering why they're moving away from you, you wouldn't have maybe give it the same kind of thought. We did talk about bigger things as well, like access to employment, and somebody on the group was talking about how she attempted to go for interviews and then wasn't sure, on a number of occasions with a similar, seeing other white people get that job, and on multiple occasions not getting the job, but not getting the feedback as to why she was different, and what was the difference between her getting the job or somebody else. But it could be very small, those small things as well that we're so unaware of, because we don't even, it doesn't cross our minds to think about it.
Yeah, indeed. I was talking in our group that this could be one of the hardest, for those of us who are white, to tell our colleagues about white privilege. Might be quite difficult. The reaction might be quite difficult. But it is as you've said, it is one of the things that causes most problems and most issues, is white privilege, and over at white supremacy is kind of the main bit of what is stopping and halting progress for anti-racist improvement. So that's what we've agreed, is that even though this is a difficult issue for white people, as we've already said, people should be comfortable about being uncomfortable, and this is a priority, because this is what we need to speak about, because we realise that people who also have white privilege, the people who aren't white and can't have these privileges, and they face these issues every day of their lives. Okay, anybody else?
Tom's got his hand up, Jeremy.
Okay, can't see. Carry on, Tom.
Hello. Yeah, we had quite a lot of examples, probably more than 10. I'm just going to pick out a couple.
Okay.
One was examples about tone of voice. You know, if someone's being assertive or passionate, it depends whether they're black or white or a male or a female. It depends how that would be taken. You know, whether it's legitimate or becoming perceived as aggressive. So that's definitely something that's a part of privilege. You know, being able to speak out and expect to be listened to.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of others. We had an example of perhaps of a black person having to change their name or revert to a name that's more pronounceable or something that's kind of more recognisable in, you know, perhaps in the UK, more easily to pronounce and more familiar, which is, you know, changing your name or using a name that isn't your main name, preferred name, or your first name is, you know, it's a compromise that not everyone has to make.
Yeah.
And probably a more obvious one is, you know, having perceptions of that you've stolen what you've got if you're dressing up rich or you look fashionable. You know, that's assumptions that you're actually poor and you've got criminal behaviour. So just a few examples there that might be relevant.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, very relevant. Thanks, Tom.
Siobhan's got her hand up as well, Jeremy.
Okay, Siobhan.
There was one that I just forgot in the group. Eurocentric beauty standards. They play quite a significant impact on like how we perceive people. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that one in there.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Okay, shall I move on then, Nicola?
Yeah.
Okay, so this next slide is we're going to have a breakout room. So I'll show you this next slide, but these are the ones you're going to talk about today. So this slide is looking at a framework of anti-racist practice. And then if you can, make a note of some action points that you're doing or need to do on your journey towards what's being called a white ally, which you'll see in the next slide. So after I've shown this slide, Nicola, can we go to breakout rooms again for about 15 minutes?
Yeah. We'll need to give people just a little bit to have a little look at the slide.
Okay. So you'll see this slide goes from white supremacy at its left-hand side, right the way to white allyship in its right-hand side. And this is done by Gorham Singh a couple of years ago. And you see white supremacy kind of accepts and in some cases promotes theories to justify white dominance and racial hierarchy, and maybe some scientific racism. There's fear and loathing of the non-white others, which might be either overt or covert, believing we will live in a meritocracy, so the best people are in our democracy. Uncritical or favourable views of empire and colonialism, you know, and the onus is on the black people to change their roles and accept their place in society. Then you go into white indifference, that's the next side. So it's passionate to defend of Western universalism, academic freedom, the right to offend. It's characterised by a refusal to take a serious look at racism and views anti-race initiatives as ideological endeavours linked to culture wars and political correctness, which you've seen recently. It's happy to make tokenistic gestures, but absolutely total refusal to accept one's own complicity in the production of racism. And then the onus is on black people to build up their own resilience. Move into white awareness. You kind of believe that racism is real and it's a product of prejudice plus power. It's characterised by the desire to critically reflect There's a desire to engage with Black issues and people, but only in certain circumstances. Maybe a result of feeling guilty of historic racism, some desire to make some amends. White privilege is recognised, and then it becomes a source of shame and embarrassment. And then the onus moves on to ourselves, white people, to overcome the unconscious bias. And then right up to white allyship then is racism is a complex interaction between structural, ideological, institutional and behavioural processes, but it can be overcome. There's a focus on paradigm shifts and concrete interventions. It's a rejection of deficit models. It accepts the link between white privilege and educational outcomes. There's a wish to share power and privilege, and the onus is on white people again to improve. So that's the thing that I'm going to ask you is if you can talk about where you are, where you feel your organisation is, perhaps where you feel your teams are on this pathway, and what might need to happen to make a difference and to improve the progress towards white allyship. So I don't know if anybody had been able to discuss or was willing to share where they feel they or their organisation are on this pathway from white supremacy to white allyship. Anybody willing to share?
We did discuss how in our organisation, so I'm Warrington Borough Council in the adults teams, that we there's differences perhaps depending on which team you're in, you know, so or who the manager is. So at the moment there isn't consistency, but probably the majority of the service is somewhere around white awareness, but definitely not fully into white allyship yet.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Got Tom Woods next.
Tom?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, in our group, I suppose we were a little bit more pessimistic. We thought there's, I mean, from different people in different organisations, one view I think which was some empathy for us. Perhaps we're even at the point of white indifference and not yet fully established in white awareness, really, you know, self-awareness about these elements of privilege. And the main point that we started to discuss before we were moved out of the room swiftly was, you know, social work should be a profession that leads on these things rather than is behind the times. You know, there's a lot going on in social movements, and social work is quite slow in catching up and quite behind other elements of society, unfortunately.
Yeah, Tom, I'd agree with that. I mean, I went to talk about this issue to our Cheshire and Wales Partnership NHS Foundation Trust Board, and they kind of were expecting that we as the social workers would be challenging the main, you know, for nurses, psychiatrists, psychologists and stuff like that, but there'd be the social workers, you know, who would be the main sort of people who would absolutely challenge and change this across the country, they were saying. But you know, that's absolutely right, it should be us. You know, we are the right people to challenge it, but we're all in these different organisations with different leaders, and it might not be that it might be easier for some of us than others, I would think.
Karen? You're on mute, Karen.
Sorry, it wasn't coming off. Sorry about that. I was kind of doing a more personal reflection, Jeremy. So after kind of reading through, I definitely resonated with white awareness, and felt that was, you know, sort of where if we were talking about where were you on the scale, that's where I was. with that idea that I need to kind of consider look at action points to look at allyship. But then I kind of went, I did that thing to sort of say, yeah, I completely understand about co-creation, building sustainable partnerships, and, you know, sort of that wishing to share power element. And then it just made me think, but I recognise I work on the Wirral. That's a majority of British white service users. But that shouldn't be a reason I don't do it. And I think that's my thing that I'm just having a look at now, and that, you know, sort of coming to a session like this, again, having that ability to come to a training session is quite tokenistic. Actually, what is it that I want to do moving forward? So I think I've taken that as a personal challenge. So.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Karen.
Jane Rooney's.
Hiya. I've just realised it's true that we don't talk about white privilege, and certainly our organisations don't talk about white privilege openly, and they will go on about anti-oppressive practice and anti-racism, but they won't talk about the, you know, in-depth hearts of the issue, and even, like I say, historically and where it's come from and all that. They don't look at all of that. And it's true, and I never realised till now that, you know, more work needs to be done and all of that, so we can all challenge it, why we're doing it. This is why we're doing it as white people, and why we should do it. And we can challenge in all different ways, small ways, really large ways, but as long as we challenge and get into white, you know, well, how do you say it? Yeah, yeah, you do that, and then it goes to your own personal life and all stuff like that. You know, it ingrains, and like white privilege, that will ingrain into you and your practice and daily life, hopefully.
Yeah, well, yeah, let's hope so.
Gavin Rooney.
Hi, I think we tend to hit a barrier in white awareness in terms of the shame, embarrassment. So we attend training, we'll talk about it, but even when we're doing our assessments, in all honesty, we'll talk about identity and diversity, and it's a very narrow perception we're talking about, really. We don't really broaden our knowledge base as we should. And if I've got to speak honestly, I'm a team manager where we are as a team. We have 12-month objectives. We have 5-month objectives in many areas. We don't have one around this area, and that's something I'm going to be implementing, because we're not where we should be. We're not achieving what we should do. And to be honest, this training has helped me to really understand that, really. And really, as a person and as a manager, I need to really go away and look at this about what more we can be doing, because we're not getting to the point we need to at the moment.
Okay, it's very honest. Thank you very much.
There's no one else in the chat.
Okay, fine. So I'll move on.
Oh, put his hand up. Craig?
Yeah, sorry, I thought my hand was already up. I moved from Manchester Authority not quite a year ago, and obviously the team there was very, very diverse, and obviously the city that you're going out to and the residents that you're supporting. And I've moved to Halton, and it's hard to be an ally, because there's only one person of colour in the RO office, and the council is just not a very diverse area. And when I approached equality and diversity within the council to say, look, we need to set an LGBTQIA group up, they said, you know, they've tried to do that before. They've tried to do one for the BAME group, but basically what they've done is people want to set a BAME group up, have had to join the Greater Liverpool region. So if I want to become an ally, I can't do it within my area. I have to go over to the Greater Liverpool region. It's just like, it's that on the Wirral, like the lady was talking before. It's not. We live in completely white areas. It's hard to be an ally and fund this. You don't filter this back down to your teams when you don't live in a very culturally diverse area. Like in Manchester, it really was very diverse, and it was easy to become an ally. It was easy to half your team were of colour. You know, it was just. But since I've moved out here, it's just white.
Mm.
And how do you become an ally? You become an ally in your personal life and the organisations you attend in your personal life, but then you're travelling out to the city for them. But it's very hard how little local authorities can.
Can I just jump in there, Jeremy? Is that okay? One of the things that you could do is we actually have across the partnership, that's with all our 8 local authorities and our 3 trusts and one of our PVIs that are involved in our partnership. We actually have, you know, our Each One Teach One group that you can actually join. And that's where obviously Jeremy and everyone who's presented today are part of that group, where we look at what we can do to one for having that allyship, but also to actually think about what we can do across the TP to kind of move things forward. And that's why we're starting with these conversation pieces. So you're very welcome if anyone wants to join that group. We meet on a 6-weekly basis, and I'll put my address, my email address in the chat. And if you want to join that group, you're very welcome to come along and actually start, you know, to make a difference, have those conversations with us and see what we can do across the TP.
Oh yeah, what do you say? You'll put your email in the chat, did you say?
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Cheers. Thanks.
Siobhan's got her hand up.
Okay, Siobhan.
Oh, Siobhan's put her hand down now.
Okay.
Sorry,
Right,
no, I thought was I speaking then? Did anyone hear me?
We couldn't hear anything now.
Oh, right. Okay. What I was saying was that I think sometimes in spaces it's quite it can be quite easy to sometimes when Black people and people of colour are around you to be an ally, but it's in like often in spaces like that are typically white that those conversations actually need to be held. I can think of a number of occasions where I have been in a room and comments have been made, not just like not just like flippant racist comments, but any kind of discriminatory comments are made, and it's because people who are there making those comments again aren't in the room, and really that's kind of the time to kind of knead away at that and try and dig into it a bit more, because they're the times when we should be doing it, like when people think that they're safe because they are in non-diverse spaces and thinking that they can say it. I'm saying this as someone who works like in Warrington Borough Council and like it's predominantly white, like, and some of me and my colleagues do have active conversations about it. And I know that some of the team managers are quite good at like raising like important conversations in team meetings, but yeah, I do understand that it can feel slightly more difficult in not spaces that aren't very diverse, but really there's probably more of a need to do it then and be having smaller conversations on a daily basis.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is, as I said before, this is probably one of the harder things to speak to our white colleagues about in those what were safe places, which, you know, will start to feel a little bit unsafe for people if we're successful. But this is something that really these are what our white colleagues need to learn about and think about and reflect about, you know, all the time. So that's something that we all will have to do after today.
5-minute time, Warren and Jeremy.
Okay, lovely. We'll move on. So following today, these are the things you should think about. So this is not just today, obviously, this is the rest of your career and ongoing after today. So continue to reflect on your own lives and reflect on a privilege or privileges that you have or the disadvantages that you face, which are totally unearned just because of your ethnicity or gender or class. When we talk about ethnicity in this particular issue, but carry on reflecting. And then if you can also reflect on how differently you would have perceived this conversation if I was black, say, and giving this to you, would it have made a difference, and if so, why? Would that have made a difference? And finally, this book by Layla Saeed, Me and White Supremacy, How to Recognise Your Privilege, Combat Racism and Change the World, recommends that this is not something that can be started and ended in a day. This is a journey, and she recommends these steps to take, such as keeping a journal on what you've thought or what you've done or who you've spoken to. Go at your own pace that you think is suitable for you. Don't generalize if you can. For the first time, she's got about 5 or 6 stages to go through. So the first time works sequentially in the progress, and then after the first time, once you've done it once, you can sort of start to look at things a different way. You can work alone, but it's better to work in a group. And number 1, keep asking questions. So I would recommend anybody who wants to take this journey forward, I would recommend reading Layla Saeed's work, or make sure your libraries have got a copy, because it does set forward like a bit of a pathway of how to achieve what we've termed white allyship, and how to, as she says, how to change the world. Okay. And finally, but I think you're going to talk about this later, Nicola, expecting to do a pledge after this event today, of what action you're going to be taking for immediate action you're going to be taking after hearing this. So I'll end now, and thank you very much for listening.